The latest on CM Punk back in WWE at the Survivor Series. We have a major update we're going to discuss in today's Amped Up podcast, Thursday, October 12th, 2023. We're also going to talk the Nature Boy Ric Flair back in a pro wrestling ring, actually wrestling again. Could it be happening? We're going to talk about it in today's Amped Up podcast. And the AEW Boss, Tony Khan, not happy with WWE. Clearly feels that even though he was pulling out all the tricks for Tuesday night's head-on collision, no pun intended, with NXT, he feels that Paul Levesque McMahon, by sending all of these megastars and even legends like Taker, all of them to NXT on Tuesday, stacking the deck so vividly, he feels that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And now, Paul Levesque McMahon, Triple H, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, even Shawn Michaels, HBK, who's just like, I'm just doing what I'm told. They're all feeling the wrath of Tony Khan over the last couple of days. Man, wait till you hear what Tony Khan said to Paul Levesque McMahon, Triple H, and HBK, and Vince McMahon. I mean, Tony Khan is just ripping them up the last 2 days. So it's two different sides of the fence with AEW. It's the fans that are saying we're an alternative. We're not focusing on anybody else. Ratings don't matter. Just enjoy pro wrestling, right? These are things you hear from a lot of the AEW fan base. But the boss is saying and doing the complete opposite, right? He's absolutely focusing on that competition. He's absolutely taking those jabs and firing those shots and making sure that the headlines, they're talking about this over the actual wrestling. The ratings don't matter, but Tony Khan is always talking about how much the ratings matter in 2023. I think there's a disconnect with the AEW fans and the boss of the company because it's two different philosophies. So I think we have to discuss that after we talk about what Tony Khan said about Paul Levesque McMahon, Shawn Michaels, and Vincent McMahon, because the past 2 days, it is obvious Tony Khan's not happy. Doesn't feel that they played necessarily fair, but he pulled out a lot of tricks too. We'll talk about it. Wait till you hear what he said, man. This is wild. I could not believe it, guys. I literally had to make sure it was even like real, or was it just like somebody just having some fun? You know, what if Tony said this? No, this was on Tony's actual. We're going to talk about it. Listen, all of this and a lot more. It is a packed, stacked, jacked, amped up podcast today. Grab your coffees or your beverage of choice, lock in the earbuds, smash that up, show that love and appreciation to the channel. I would appreciate that. Thank you in advance. And then come on back. Let's get amplified. All right, so I'm not even going to make you guys wait, man. Just like we ended the cold open teaser, we'll start with the big story that I know you guys want to dive into, and that is Tony Khan. We'll get to Ric Flair, we'll get to CM Punk, we'll get to all of that later. But Tony Khan, man, absolutely is slamming Triple H, Paul Levesque McMahon, even Shawn Michaels, HBK, who's just doing what he's told, and Vincent Kennedy McMahon. How do we tackle this, man, before I get to the statements? We'll set it up. In case you've been living underneath a rock, Tuesday night, NXT versus AEW. AEW was booted from Wednesday night because of Major League Baseball, the playoffs, which was an absolute... It was a no-gamer, right? The Braves from Atlanta never showed up. They got absolutely annihilated. So maybe it was best to just leave Dynamite in the Wednesday night slot. There was no way you could have known. Baseball is always going to take precedent. But they were booted. Now, from what we're hearing is they could have picked another night. They could have actually went to a different night. They settled on Tuesday. They wanted this head-on battle. So say, okay, cool. Let's do this. BC put up a whole podcast yesterday. Thank you guys for not just listening in on that podcast yesterday, but showing that a lot of love. A lot of you guys really enjoyed the discussion. We talked about how competition like this, man, I hope we get it more in the future because everybody wins. Even people from Jeff Jarrett to Swerve Strickland opened up in interviews recently saying this is what we need more of, this head-on competition with the big companies, WWE or NXT versus AEW, everybody benefits. I told you guys that 1.5 million plus viewers tuned in Tuesday night. Usually you get about 600,000 to 800,000 on average tops. Wednesday night you get about 700,000 to 850,000 tops. That's the new average for Dynamite. So for a Tuesday or a Wednesday show to pull over 1.5, you're at Monday Night Raw numbers already. The difference is Raw's been around for decades. Not bad, right? Shows you that the wrestling audience is there. You just got to give them a reason to care, right? Ratings matter because they're the only metric that shows us who's tuning in live on their couch, watching on their big screen. Is your product captivating enough for an audience to tune in live? You pulled in double the viewership that Tuesday would have pulled by adding in AEW and adding even more interest to NXT. The audience is there. You got to captivate it. So big thank you to everybody that tuned in or listened to that podcast yesterday. And hopefully you enjoyed the discussion. But we talked about how that's needed. So no harm, no foul. I like what Tony Khan did. Let's go head to head on Tuesday, right? They're stacking their Tuesday shows anyway to get the new big TV rights deal with USA Network or anybody that's going to fork over a lot of money. And maybe after all these years, NXT will actually garner a profit for Endeavor. Because under Vince McMahon, NXT never drew a dime, guys. It made money, but it equaled out their costs. That's a true story. Vince never actually made a true dime from NXT, sadly. And they had good years, right? We all remember Black and Gold. People won't give that up. They'll put Triple H on a pedestal till the end of time because of a few good Black and Gold years. But Vince never really drew a dime from it, so maybe one day they will, right? They're hoping for the big next TV rights deal, and maybe that's the start of it. So they're stacking their roster. So Tony Khan said, hey, let's just go to Tuesday night. Let's rock with it. What Tony Khan didn't think was going to happen was that Paul Levesque McMahon was just going to literally send Shawn Michaels the cavalry. From Judgment Day to the Bloodline. From L.A. Knight to John Cena. From an Asuka to an Undertaker. Everything and everyone and anything in between. Everything and everyone. They were flipping over rocks finding superstars. Tegan Knox showed back up backstage. Paul Heyman's talking to Ava Raine backstage. That's The Rock's daughter, trying to recruit The Rock's daughter to the bloodline. LA Knight is a special guest referee. Cena and Heyman are in two big stars' corner, Mello and Braun Breaker. The Undertaker is choke slamming mofos at the end of the night. NXT stacked the deck. Tony Khan didn't like that. Even though Tony Khan was, and I do have to say, it was Paul Levesque McMahon that was initiating a lot of these tricks. Absolutely. Right? Like, for instance, a half an hour commercial free. First of all, stacking the deck like he did once he found out that Tony Khan was coming on Tuesday. But that's no harm, no foul. You found out that they're coming to your show. You're going to defend your house. So he stacked the deck. Okay. Then he went a half an hour commercial free. He's well within his rights to do such. Just like Tony Khan is well within his rights to call up Turner Networks and say, hey, the competition is doing this. Can I get a half an hour? I'll pay for it, he says. And he got about 46 minutes. So Tony Khan goes and he matches Paul Levesque McMahon and he makes sure that he gets a half an hour plus of commercial-free television. Paul Levesque already has the 8-minute overrun. They find out that they're going to get an extra minute. They're going to go 9 minutes. So what does Tony Khan do? He goes and he gets, 13, 14? But he made sure that he got a few minutes extra at the end of the night to make sure that the last visual you had was AEW. So they were going back and forth. Even before, when they went commercial free, you saw what Tony Khan said, right? The war of words, and it's not really a war of words because there's only one person sending over these shots. There's only one person delivering these jabs and these slams. WWE is not responding to Tony Khan. Tony Khan is just showing his frustration. And Tony Khan said, "So you want to be a dick, huh?" It was like a meme from a show or a movie. One of those little pictures or memes or GIFs. And it just says, "So you want to be a dick, huh?" And above it, it says, "We also will be a half an hour commercial free at the Jump of Dynamite." So he's saying you want to be a dick to Paul Levesque McMahon, WWE. That's huge. And AEW, the boss of AEW, telling the competition, "So you want to be a dick, huh?" So then NXT and AEW take on one another. Now, as I talked about in yesterday's podcast, NXT pulled 921,000 viewers. AEW pulled 609,000 viewers. That's down 191,000 from their Wednesday night time slot last week when AEW pulled 800,000. So you moved a different night, but you held on. You held on to over 600,000 viewers with a stacked NXT card. Did they get their asses whooped? No doubt. By a landslide? You betcha. By a wide margin? No question. It was a whooping. 921 to 609. We know that. It's over 300,000 viewers. That's more than half of AEW's Dynamite's total viewership. So yeah, it's an ass whooping. But the fact that they held on to 600 plus on a different night with a stacked NXT card, AEW, they can quickly pick themselves up and dust themselves off of this defeat. I mean, the way the wrestling world is reacting to this, it's like AEW will never get up from it. No, actually, NXT could have easily pulled over a milli. I didn't have it at such. I had it about maybe 920 to 970-ish, maybe at the high end of 970. I thought they were at the low end of what I thought they were going to achieve. I wouldn't have been totally shocked if they pulled a milli. But NXT only got 64,000 more viewers than last week, or just over 60,000. So with a stacked card, they only pulled over 60,000. It would have been way more, but that shows you what competition will do. AEW dug into that. Together, they split it. Well, not really split it. NXT, by a wide margin, by a landslide, did win the night. 900 plus to 600 plus. But you add that up, and pro wrestling wins 1.5 milli plus on a Tuesday night. Shows you wrestling fans are out there even on a random Tuesday. They'll tune in. Competition's fun when you got big companies going at it like that. And they're both going for all the marbles, man. They want that ratings victory. So what happens is NXT wins. Now, Tony Khan is obviously not happy about it, right? And instead of just internally just saying, all right, this is where we're going to get better. This is where we're going to improve. Next time we go to battle, we're going to win this thing. No, Tony Khan, he was like responding to like fans who were just talking about like Vince and NXT or Paul Levesque McMahon, Triple H and Shawn Michaels. So in response to Paul Levesque, and Shawn Michaels just kind of bulking up the NXT show, Tony Khan said, this was a meme. This actually, he posted this, guys. This is from Tony Khan about how Paul Levesque McMahon went about business and Shawn Michaels, even though Michaels was just doing what Paul Levesque McMahon told him. We're sending you these wrestlers. You have to win the night. So Tony Khan sends a meme over that says, first of all, he actually wrote, "I have a message for them." And the meme says, "Bald assholes." Bald assholes, he called them. Bro, are you kidding me? Bald assholes. How many companies do you know where the owner of one company is so pissed off and he's got no restraint? And I'm not saying it's good or bad, man. We love Tony Khan for a lot of reasons. We also wish that he had a good PR people and other reasons, right? But there's no chill in this dude's game. That's half of why a lot of people like him. But even those people say there's times where maybe it's best left unsaid, right? But how many times you see Coca-Cola's CEO going at it with Pepsi's CEO? How many times you see Post cereal, the CEO going after Kellogg's cereal, right? Like Fruity Pebbles is pissed off at Frosted Flakes. Damn you, you bald tiger. Frosted Flakes is talking about infidelity over at Post. Because that's what Tony did with Vince. Did you guys hear this? Listen, hold on. I hope I got, let me get this exact quote. Now, this was on Vince McMahon. Now, a random fan just said the difference is, I don't know what they were talking about, like taking shots at one another, because both companies were doing that leading up to Tuesday. So I guess a fan said the difference is that Vince has earned the right to take the cheap shots. He has the power and the influence to make them, and he's earned them. So Vince has put together a whole career's worth of whatever in the pro wrestling business, equity basically. So he's earned the right to take some shots if he wants to. Even though Vince isn't really online sending shots over to other wrestling organizations. That's Tony. So I don't know what this fan's talking about. But Tony responds. You ready for this? So Tony Khan responds, and I quote, "Yes, Vince has allegedly used his power and influence to shoot a lot of shots." End quote. Bro, listen, I understand the feeling about Vince McMahon in the wrestling community. Trust me, we only cover him for the wrestling product, and we've ripped him apart for the over 5 years we've had this channel. But you can't say that as a CEO to the other company, man, or the boss. You can't say things like that, man. There's got to be a PR person. Yes, Vince has allegedly used his power and influence to shoot a lot of shots. Talking about paralegals and such, obviously, abusing his power in WWE while having it. Even if there's truth to it, certain people, it's best left unsaid for optics. You want your wrestlers to really look at you like a boss, like a mature suit and tie, maybe even, but a mature, level-headed, emotions kept in check type of individual. There you go. You know, your roster wants to look at you like that. I always remember the media scrum with Punk. It wasn't the brawl out. It was the one before, I believe. Tony Khan and CM Punk were sitting next to each other on one of these media scrums. And they were asked about Punk not pulling in ratings or something. I don't know what it was. And Tony Khan flipped out, started dropping F-bombs, flipped out. And Punk was looking at him like, where am I? Like, I understand this dude's not Vince, and I've had my problems with Vince, still have some now, right? That's what Punk is thinking in this moment. But, whoa, like, you can't do that, man. Watch Punk during that. Punk was just looking at Tony like he was wild, and when it was his time to speak, he basically, he tried to make a light of the situation. He was like, all right, that was extra. That was a little much. And he tried to be the level-headed adult in the room. Now, it's pretty bad when Punk has to be that over the CEO. But I always remember that because the very next media scrum, or maybe it was two, but I think it was the next one, that was Brawl Out. The next time that Tony and Punk were together at a media scrum, it was Punk that was flipping out and dropping F-bombs. Why? Because your wrestlers see how you're acting. Your talent is seeing how you conduct business, and you set the tone for the room. You set everything in motion for how those locker rooms are, for how the atmosphere is. There's the old saying, read the room. Tony is setting the temperature for the rooms. So CM Punk saw that, and he became what Tony Khan was, the media scrum beforehand. I wasn't shocked at all when Punk flipped out like that because he was looking at Tony a few months before and he saw that that's how you conduct business. Even the CEO is. And now you have him. He doesn't stop, right? He's always saying things like this. And on one hand, you're like, that is so cool, man. Like this boss is just absolutely just wilding out. But on the flip side to that is you have to remember that these words, man, their own talent is having to defend them, right? When his talent is doing interviews, for instance. I can't tell you guys how many times the AEW roster has to answer questions about Tony Khan's outbursts on platforms like social media or interviews that he does. And that's where it becomes a problem. His talent shouldn't have to justify words about the competition or try to decipher what he meant in words about the competition. I hope that makes sense, man, because it ends up taking the headlines from the actual shows, the product, the company itself. I mean, to call Paul Levesque McMahon and Shawn Michaels, to say you want to be a dick, bald assholes, and then to say, yeah, I heard Vince use his power and influence to take a lot of shots, or to shoot a lot of shots. Whoa, man. It's funny. Trust me, if you're a fan, guys, you would think a fan is writing that, right? And it's just a funny dialogue between a couple of fans. You would never think that that's the boss of AEW. You never think that, dude. It's wild. So he's making it very known that he just wants to beat WWE. He wants to be looked at as such. And that's awesome. I've told you guys from day one when AEW started why I started supporting AEW from day one. And unfortunately, they fell off their own concept. And it's hard to support that as vividly as we once did because they lost their identity along the way. But the reason we all supported from day one is because we wanted the competition. We said, yes, finally, enough money, enough talent. The person wants to actually invest time and effort into this wrestling thing. Vince McMahon can finally have competition. This is great. And we thought AEW was just going to be the best thing for the wrestling business. And not only did they go stagnant, but they're actually regressing over the last year or two. And to the point where even NXT has taken over the third spot. Stacking the roster or not, I understand. But now they're the third most watched show. AEW Dynamite is bumped to fourth. Rampage and Collision only pull 300,000 to 400,000 viewers at best every week. And this is... You look at Tony Khan and you see there's so much potential for AEW. And the ship just needs to be tidied up. Fix all the little things that should have been fixed yesterday that don't take a lot of time, actually. Just a little bit of effort, some knowledge in what they are. Tweak them, reverse them, flip them. You're good. Then start to tackle the bigger problems and the bigger issues. But the fact that Tony looks at himself or wants to be such viable competition to Vince in WWE or Paul Levesque in WWE or Endeavor, Ari in WWE, that's great. But you got to put in the work. You can't think you're going to get the whole piece of this pizza pie that Vince McMahon has created over decades, nearly 50 years? You can't think you're getting that in 5 years, and Tony Khan's got 3 primetime shows in another organization. He's got Dynamite. He's got Rampage. He's got Collision. He's got ROH. He's already talking about a video library on a streaming service. Why? Quantity, more. Quality over quantity. Less is more. Stop. Build gradually. For years, WWE only had what's called the Superstars of Wrestling. 1 hour on a Saturday morning or afternoon. 1 hour, guys, every week. No kidding. And then you had like a primetime wrestling that got added. Wrestling Challenge. Like for an hour on a Sunday. You gradually added some like tweaker shows. Nothing big. And then years later, you added a Monday Night Raw. And then years later, you added a SmackDown. NXT was developed late in the 2000s, way years later. You gradually do that over time. The problem with AEW's Tony Khan is he just thought he was WWE from the jump. He's like, if we just make a bunch of shows and put out a bunch of matches, we're basically competition. We're there. You can't do that. It's never going to work. Quantity is never going to outweigh quality. Scale it back. Rampage and Collision, make it one show, put it on Friday right against SmackDown. Honestly, you'll lose nothing. I said this over the last couple of podcasts. You're only pulling in 300 some odd thousand viewers, guys. That is dreadful. And that's not even just with Fastlane. That's the past couple of weeks. So just put it on Friday against SmackDown. It's going to make it more fun for everybody. The fans, it's going to up everybody's game. And I promise you, they're at least going to get 500,000 to 600,000 bare minimum. Well, you're doubling what you're getting now on a Saturday night. Get rid of Rampage, put Collision, because I like Collision's concept. I like the color theming. I like the theming in general. Collision, I feel, most weeks is their better show, even Dynamite, over Dynamite. So put Collision on a Friday night right up against SmackDown. Or wherever SmackDown's going to land next October. That's the better bet, right? Because then they're going back to cable television. It's a fair fight. And you put Collision against SmackDown wherever it lands. That's what I do with Collision. Right up against one another. That way fans are not overexposed with wrestling either, right? They don't want to watch 2 hours of SmackDown and then they got to watch an hour of your shit or 2 hours on Rampage, whatever it is. They don't want to do that, man. Put them both together and let's make it fun for those 2 hours. Remote in hand, or maybe people got 2 TVs and 2 cable boxes set up. Make it fun for those 2 hours. It's an event. That's what's going to catapult AEW. Not having these shows on a weird time slot like 10 p.m. on a Friday or on a Saturday night. It's not working. Put Collision up against Rampage, or Collision up against SmackDown. Get rid of Rampage. Start condensing. ROH. I loved ROH, man. I can't tell you how much I loved my Briscoe brothers. Roxy. Jay Lethal. Don't get me started. I loved ROH. This is not ROH. This is like WWE trying to redo ECW without Paul Heyman at the lead. No, stop. This is not ROH. And you just have more work for yourself that you're building. It's more work. And it's sad that talent like Athena Ember Moon has to be over there. I still don't know. Half the talent on there, man, that I forgot was even with AEW over in ROH. You got to remind yourself every now and again. Most fans, a poll was done recently. Most fans don't even know where to watch ROH. They know nothing. They don't know the roster right now. They haven't been keeping track. They don't even know how to find it. And they don't even care to look about how to find it. They don't even want to do the Google search. That's sad, man. That sucks. So my whole overall gist here for you guys is Tony Khan is already looking at himself as equal level playing field with WWE. And that's the problem. I admire the gusto in the kid. But build. You have to. If you build it, they will come. Build. Do the work. There's time to take these shots at WWE's upper brass in the future if you really want to do that. There's times to think that you're just going to pull out a ratings victory over NXT when they stack the deck like this. But why did they win? Because they have years and years of building some of these wrestlers, from a Cena to an Undertaker and everybody in between. They've had years to build these dudes. You do that now, Tony. And in several years from now, then you position yourself when you're achieving 1 to 2 million viewers, bare minimum, and you have larger than life superstars that are homegrown talent from your company. Then we can start to talk about equal level playing field. Right? Baby steps. Next year, put Collision up against SmackDown. You're going to get your ass whooped for a while, no question. That's fine. You're going to get more than 300,000 viewers that you're getting on Saturday nights. And you build. Start off with 5. Then you get to 6, 7. Then all of a sudden you get a couple of really good storylines on that Friday night. And people are switching over from SmackDown. Before you know it, you're going to have those weeks where you're popping a milli and WWE's going backwards. All of a sudden, you're right there. Baby steps, man. In 5 years, you can't act like you are WWE. Guys, you know I'm right here, man. I'm trying to give words that are going to help the company. Sometimes you need to, even though he's not a part of my Green Bay Packers anymore. He's a New York Jet, barely for a couple of plays. But Aaron Rodgers once said, RELAX, relax. Relax. Take a breath, man. You have all this money. Thankfully, from Shad, Papa Khan. You have all this money. You have a network that is willing to give you a lot of leeway. You have obviously passion for this industry. You have a great roster that's been assembled. Nothing is holding back AEW but AEW themselves. Nothing is holding Tony Khan back from being competition to WWE other than Tony Khan. Isn't it ironic? The biggest competition for Tony right now is Tony. The biggest competition for AEW right now is AEW. From day one when AEW started, my mission statement was to help AEW, just like I'm trying to help WWE. People think it's too harsh, I'm too negative. That's fine. I'm the asshole. That's fine. My mission statement remains, I'm trying to help pro wrestling get back to a period where fans, talent, management, the companies, the industry is actually booming. WWE's been making record revenue, and people think the wrestling business is booming when the numbers are all going backwards. No, that's not the wrestling business booming. So, hopefully, Tony Khan just relaxes a little bit. It's cool to have them feelings and those internal talks with some of the upper brass around a dinner table. But you can't put those comments publicly. They'll come back, they'll bite you in the ass. It's not going to help you in the long run. It's a good laugh for the wrestling community. You want to be a dick, bald assholes? I heard Vince use his power and influence to take a lot of shots, meaning more than just verbally. He's talking paralegals and whatnot. That's funny over the dinner table or for fans to discuss. But man, you're putting your own company in an awkward position when they have to answer for their boss, using language like that and throwing shots around like that. It's not a good look. I know, BC hates to be the adult in the room here and say that, right? We just want to laugh at it and go, oh, Tony's hilarious. But we also, more than anything, want to see real competition for WWE because everybody is going to benefit. We saw it on Tuesday night, 1.5 plus million viewers on a night that usually pulls half that, at best. At best. Because it's not every week NXT pulls 750. They've been stacking the deck, so they crossed 800 a couple of times, but at best. Wednesday night, same thing. 800 is their new normal, 850. Tony Khan, man, damn. He's a passionate, emotional dude, and he just spits out what he's thinking, man. A PR dude would really help Tony and AEW, I'll tell you that much, man. But if you're wondering his true feelings about Michaels and Paul Levesque and Vinnie Mac, well, he's telling you. He's telling you they're bald asshole dicks. Salute, guys. Thank you for having another awesome discussion with the BC, man. That's why I love having the podcast. It's a lot of fun discussion. It's intriguing discussion, right? Because there's so many ways to look at it. But I think most of what is said on this podcast, we all can agree on because it's just basics, right? It's just literally just common sense and logic, and it's just wanting the best for everyone and everything. So when you have that as the goal, people can agree a little bit more easily because it's basics. It's just facts. Interesting. We'll see, man. We'll see if we can get this competition in the future. I think next month they're going head-to-head one more time, right? Is that Rampage going against SmackDown? I'll try to find out more info, but we might have a little battle next month between AEW and maybe that's the main roster. We'll see. CM Punk, let's talk that next after a swig of coffee. Survivor Series. Could it be happening? Not so fast. So the latest report is that WWE has denied wanting to work or denied CM Punk's involvement with WWE. They do not want to do business with CM Punk. They have declined the offer that was made. Apparently, Punk has been trying to get back in WWE for a while now. Obviously, when Fox came out with Backstage, was it called? Something, whatever, Fox 1. And Punk was brought on as an analyst. It was then that we were hearing that Punk wanted to do business. And then he just admitted it. He was asked and he said straight out, yeah, I mean, I'd be a fool not to take the call. I don't care if it's Hunter or if they're calling and it's the right price. Of course I would at least entertain the call, I think was his exact words. Because there was a lot of fans like, oh, he's never going to go back. He was fired on his wedding day, BC. He's upset. He's pissed. No. And I always told you on this channel, no, he would absolutely. He's a businessman. And what I've seen is they always come back to WWE at some point down the line, down the pipeline. So around then he wanted to go. Then when he was injured or suspended, remember he showed up to Monday Night Raw. He was backstage for a little bit, we heard. Then he was removed because they just didn't want that type of intel in the locker room. But we heard that he talked to a lot of people about like feeling out Paul Levesque and how he feels about him coming back to WWE. So that was twice. And then obviously now, because there's no way that CM Punk can end the career on that note. I mean, I've been the first to say his smile is gone when it comes to pro wrestling. Unfortunately, I just don't think he's happy with pro wrestling anymore. And pro wrestling is no longer happy with CM Punk. So it's one of those marriages that has to end in divorce, especially AEW and CM Punk. But it would suck to end just like that. So I've been saying since he was released by AEW, fired, contract terminated, I've been saying the best place for him is actually WWE to end his career. One more year and you have a discussion with Levesque McMahon and everybody's on the same page. Listen, you don't have to smile when you come to work. You don't have to get along with people. I get it. Just don't be a mega dick. Don't start any issues. If you have a problem, if somebody's screwing with you, come to me. I will solve it. I assure you. But let's just do business, right? And set up some good storylines for the foreseeable future so he knows what he's going to do, who he's going to lose to, who he's going to go over. Have plans. And then everybody's happy. I doubt very much that CM Punk is going to pull what he pulled in AEW in front of Paul Levesque McMahon, in front of Vince, in front of Ari, or whoever else is in Gorilla, right? Bronson Reed too, but Brock Lesnar, and he's actually tight with Brock for the most part. So Brock's not just going to watch CM Punk raise hell at Gorilla before Brock has to go out and have him. No, Brock's going to settle that shit down quick. Levesque McMahon will put an end to that quick. And he wouldn't pull that in front of Vincent Kennedy if he happens to be backstage. You're not going to pull that in front of Ari. Ari is ruthless. It's a different structure in WWE. You're not doing that in Gorilla. What he did to Tony Khan in AEW. So the structure is needed too. That's where CM Punk, as miserable as he says he was, that type of structure Punk needs. WWE is just the best fit for him. As long as everything's ironed out, I think Punk's behavior will be a lot better than it was in AEW. And you can have some good matches. I'm not saying wrestling-wise, and I don't even care. I'm talking about the storyline. I'm talking about the magnitude of the match. I don't care if they go out there and they throw some kicks, punches, clotheslines, and some body slams. You're going to pay your money to see Roman Reigns versus CM Punk, LA Knight versus Punk, the storylines, the promos. You're going to pay your money to see CM Punk and Sethington Rollins, knowing what Rollins said about Punk IRL. These are matches you are going to want to see, feuds you're going to be into. And it's a structure that is best going to suit Punk. But the latest word what we're hearing is that WWE has declined to work with Punk. They feel that the negatives outweigh the positives. Does that sound familiar, by the way? Who's been telling you that about Punk for months and maybe even years? That with Punk and the way he goes about business and burns every bridge, eventually companies are going to start looking at him as a liability, not a reliability. They're going to start to say, well, damn, there's a few positives that this dude brings, but the negatives, they're outweighing the positives so badly that the weight is going to break our back. And do we want to break our back by bringing CM Punk on board? Do we want to pick up CM Punk? I told you guys this was eventually going to happen. And it's sad because this is the time to bring Punk back into WWE. With WrestleMania season looming, I'm not saying he's got to be in the main event, nor should he be, especially just coming back. But with Mania season looming, I mean, that's massive. What it could do for the Rumble and the whole road to Mania. But more than that, Survivor Series is in Chicago. And that's when any affiliation with AEW officially ends. Punk said a few weeks ago he's got like 60 days or something before he can say anything. So he's under some type of restriction, but it ends right before Survivor Series. They're in Chicago. We all know that Survivor Series, before Rumble, Survivor Series really sets the tone for Mania. because then they go into their off season. All of December is basically that's their off season, that 1 month. So they really want to plant the seeds of Mania at Survivor Series. That's the time and place, guys. So I don't know how reputable we can see this report. I'll tell you guys what I'm hearing, man, from my people down in Florida. And I wanted more info before I say anything on it. But since we're having this discussion, that's why I love this podcast. I'll tell you guys exactly what I'm hearing. I'm hearing, and this is how it was put to me, WWE actually wants to do business with Punk. They just don't trust the situation. They don't know if this is going to be right for the company, and they have hesitations because of the roster. They don't want anything in the roster that's going to bring down the morale. That locker room, this is how it was put to me, and it was actually backed up. This was put to me a week ago, guys, and at the media scrum after Fastlane, Cody and H alluded to the locker room all working as a team lately. Like, it's really weird. Cody and H, how many years they've been in the business, they've never seen it like this, where everybody's like, the morale is, everyone's like a teamwork, you know? With the whole transition, people really want Levesque to succeed. And Papa H is always giving the hoorah speeches. That's why they call him Papa H. You know, he's always there to give you that old college try speech. And it rallies up the troops. Now, Paul Levesque McMahon has yet to actually produce good television shows, and that shows in the ratings. That shows you in my reviews. It's just not. There's baby steps to better, but there's still so much that should have already been rearranged, changed, flipped upside down. And I don't think Paul even realizes it. But that's a different subject for another day. But the locker room is trying their hardest right now with the whole transition to Endeavor. Vince being more out than in. They're trying really hard to help H out. And they don't want Punk to come in because they know a lot of people in while Punk was there, they didn't like Punk. Just like the stories you're hearing in AEW. You got a handful or two that like Punk, will call him their friend. And the majority saying, nah, dude was a dick. So that's the hesitation. That's exactly what I'm hearing, guys, is that they want to. They see value in it. But the hesitation is just so strong for justified reasons. That sucks. It's everything I told you guys, man. I told you guys that if you burn so many bridges, when you turn around because you got to get back, there's no bridges to walk over. How you getting back? I hope they change their mind. Isn't that shocking? I know. BC of all people is saying he actually wants to see CM Punk return. It's because I feel this is the last run that everybody would need. The fans could finally say, that's satisfying enough. We can stop saying CM Punk every show for the next 7 years. CM Punk, whether he finds a smile or not, he can end his career the right way and hopefully be a little bit more satisfied with how things ended, and then he can go on his way. WWE can mend the relationship and vice versa with Punk and get value from it. I see a lot more value with Punk in WWE than AEW. AEW didn't know what to do with Punk. Punk didn't know what to do with AEW, and it showed. And the ratings showed that. I gave you guys some matches in WWE with Punk, and the thought alone has you already pulling out your wallet. I hope that they do. There's still time, obviously, man. Over a month. I think Survivor Series Crown Jewel is next on the 4th, and then 3 weeks later, Saturday the 25th of November, is Survivor Series. So there's time. I really hope that they flip this around. The fact that what I am hearing is that they actually do see value and they do want to do business. They just don't know if they can trust the sitch. They don't know if this is the best option for the locker room because everybody is really trying to make the best out of this transition. They're trying. Vince McMahon held that meeting. Vincent, Ari, H was there. And they asked, they said, just raise your morale. Everybody stay confident. Everything is going to be good. It's not a time for panic, yada, yada. And then the next day, there was cuts and roster cuts and budget cuts. That's BS, I understand. But we haven't heard of any after that. So maybe a lot of people feel like they dodged that, right? Hey, we made it out. I'm going to put on my smile and hope that nobody notices that I'm the miserable one in the locker room. I'm trying to keep this job. But people are starting to work together. Would Punk divide the locker room like he's done in the past with a lot of companies? I don't know. I would bring him back, Survivor Series Chicago, set up something big, and just keep checking up on him. Dude, are you good? Are you in the right headspace? Are you all right? Is there an issue, right? Because never should a backstage issue overshadow the actual shows, right? I don't think in WWE, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, or WrestleMania is going to be overshadowed by a Punk WWE backstage fight, right? Hours before Royal Rumble, Punk and Paul Levesque had a brawl, or a shouting match, or Punk held Levesque McMahon by the throat backstage before he went out and threatened not to go out there. I doubt very much that's going to happen in Gorilla at World Wrestling Entertainment. Ain't going to happen. Structure's different. Dude probably wouldn't make it out of the arena. Not vertically anyway. Wouldn't happen. And Punk knows that. Punk, did you guys watch his whole AEW run? This dude knew before he signed with AEW that he wanted back in WWE. He told you that in so many ways that he would do business with them. They just never called. Hope they change their mind, man. Survivor Series, it's still weeks away, and that's just the best. I know BC of all people is saying he actually wants to see Punk return at Survivor Series, but guys, it's the best sitch for everybody. Everybody wins, and we can all finally, when it's said and done, put a cap on it and stop with the whole CM Punk nonsense. Even Punk is probably fed up with it by now. And lastly, Ric Flair back in a pro wrestling ring, actually wrestling. Could it actually happen? Yup. If you're asking straight from the horse's mouth himself, Nature Boy Ric Flair, he says, I'm actually ready to go back. I actually really want to wrestle again, believe it or not. And by the way, that was several times within the last week. So not just like a ha-ha one time. No, he's talking about it more and more. Now, Hulk Hogan talked about it for so long, but Hulk knows that just walking is a chore for Hulk Hogan. And that's unfortunate because Hulk Hogan, man, he really tried to limit his style not to get injured, right? Just dropping a leg drop. Hulk Hogan would do the punches, the big boot, a body slam, clothesline in the corner, and a leg drop. That's it. 5 moves of doom was Hulk Hogan before anybody else. And to see that leg drop took such a tear on him, and the big boot, and things like that. I mean, Hulk Hogan with the knee and the back issues that he's had. Walking is a chore. So as much as Hogan would love to have another match at 70-something years old, Hulk knows it's not happening. So now he's finally understanding that, and he's having more fun with it. And he's talking about what would have happened if I could step back in the ring. Instead of talking about, man, my last match, brother. I want Cena, man. No, not anymore. Now he understands that. But Ric Flair, he doesn't have that off switch. Ric Flair will seriously have another match, even though he just had his last match. Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal were in that match. I think Andrade was in that match. It was a tag match. And he passed out in that match, by the way. Apparently, he went out freaking heavy drinking the night before, and he's 70-something, so he passed out in the match. They had to, wake him up. That was scary, bro. But Ric Flair doesn't have that off switch, and there's that mentality that, dude, he's going to live his life, and as long as nobody else is getting hurt, let him live his life. But that's kind of the problem. In pro wrestling, your opponent, he's in your hands. And sometimes it's not like a Canadian destroyer from the top rope or a power bomb where you got to protect their neck or back. And no, Ric Flair should not be in the ring. You could just say it's going to be a match of punches, kicks, a body slam, some clothesline, some chops. Woo! Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If he can't actually go, he shouldn't be in the ring. And to say Ric Flair lost 67 steps from 100 would be an understatement. It's being extremely generous. So it becomes a health thing, not just for Rick, guys. If it's just him, then yeah, let him live his life. If he wants to run a 45-mile marathon in one day, let him. If he passes out, croaks at on the 24th mile, that sucks, but he went out living his life. Made it to mile 24 out of 45. Maybe he goes the whole 45. Maybe it takes him 18 days to do such, but he made it. That's up to him. He's not harming anybody. He wants to run 45 miles. But if you're in a pro wrestling ring, guys, you have to think about the health of the other person at that point. So that's where BC has a problem with it. Otherwise, I'd say let him go. I love to see it, man. The nostalgia of it. Him coming down with his robe. He's wooing. He's chopping. He's having the time of his life. You know, I thought they did it in the right way, the tag match, so he's limited and he doesn't have to do any power moves. Nobody's really in harm's way, right? Same thing I said with Cody Rhodes versus Sethington Rollins. Hell in a Cell, I believe. That's when Cody had the torn pec. We all remember that visual. And a lot of people said, well, that's a sloppy job. He should have never been in that ring, when he admits he didn't really have all the usage in that arm. Could barely raise it at times. But if you watch the match, Seth was never in any danger. He was protected the whole time. So there's those scenarios where these are consummate professionals. They know what they're doing. They know how to work themselves around a match. Time and time again, wrestlers have worked injured and around body parts, and you've never noticed, I bet, especially before the interweb machine was a real thing. I can't tell you how many times you talk about a sloppy shop. You don't know how sloppy it used to be. They would wrestle injured nonstop. You probably never noticed it because you just saw him working around it. Well, with Ric Flair, you'd have to work around a lot if he's going to have a one-on-one, and he'd probably be in another tag or even a six-man tag. I don't know. Would you guys like to see it? Is it the best situation? Are you putting others in harm's way, even if you're just doing punches, kicks, chops, body slam? I don't know how you guys feel about it, man. On one hand, I'm like, let the dude rock, hit the music. On the other hand, I'm like, nah, at what point do you just say enough? 70-something years old, the dude's doesn't he have a pacemaker? His last match, he literally passed out in the ring. It's not even a point of like, at this point, it's embarrassing, BC. It's beyond that. It's just, is this the best thing to do for others, not just yourself, right? It's a fine line between let him live his life. It's his. It's a fine line between that, let him live his life, and now you're involving others, right? And that's where it becomes the issue. Pro wrestling, it takes at least two to tango. Interesting concept. Ric Flair talking more and more about wanting one more match. We've heard that several times. The first time we heard that, we're back in, WCW, we heard it many, many decades ago, right? 2 decades ago. Then at WrestleMania 24, which was like, 15, 16 years ago? Last match against Shawn Michaels, I believe. He'd been wrestling ever since. Anyway, guys, I told you it was packed. Stacked and jacked, this podcast. If you made it the entire way, listen to every minute, every second of this podcast, you guys are the absolute best. Thanks for having a great discussion with BC. And until next time, I don't have the super thanks super chats, if there was any in the last couple of days or yesterday. I don't have them in front of me right now. The list isn't popping up. But once I get that, any super thanks super chatters down below, anybody that threw a coffee over to BC, if I get that list, if there is any, I will absolutely give you a shout out in the very next podcast, I assure you. So just want to set that straight as well. All right, until next time, and there will be a next time, top guys, we're out. BC saying check you. Peace.